The HOA laughed when they refused to pay my $22,000 repair bill. Less than 24 hours later, every millionaire living beside that private lake found themselves locked outside. She called the sheriff, convinced I'd be arrested. But after reading one county document, the deputies quietly stepped back and told the HOA president, there was nothing they could do. For nearly 30 years, everyone believed the HOA owned the lake. They never realized the only road leading to it, legally belonged to me. What started as a $22,000 repair bill uncovered more than $80,000 in missing HOA funds, and ended with an entire board being removed. This is how one forgotten property deed changed everything. 24 hours after my HOA refused to reimburse a $22,000 emergency repair, I legally locked every homeowner out of the private lake they had paid millions to live beside. The HOA president called first, then her attorney, then the police. But after reading one document, even the officers admitted there was nothing they could do. Marissa believed she controlled the lake. She never realized the only access road didn't belong to the HOA at all. 3 months earlier, none of this seemed possible. My name is Ethan Mercer. I didn't move here for luxury. I came because my daughter believed this lake was home. Every brochure promised peaceful lake living. Every neighbor talked about the water. It became the heart of the community. But while homeowners saw beauty, the HOA president saw control. Trash cans, grass height, mailbox colors. Every small mistake became another fine. Most families stayed quiet. Fighting the HOA simply wasn't worth the stress. That silence gave the board exactly what it wanted, complete control. Everything changed after the storm. The morning after, I noticed something everyone else ignored. The embankment was collapsing. Water had already begun cutting through the foundation. If that road failed, 5 homes would flood within minutes. Worse still, emergency vehicles would lose their only reliable access. I documented everything, photographs, measurements, and emails. Days passed. Every message I sent to the HOA disappeared into silence. The damage kept getting worse, while the board discussed flower beds. One afternoon, Lily looked at the collapsing embankment and asked the question every homeowner should have asked. If everyone knows it's dangerous, why isn't anyone fixing it? I hired an emergency engineering crew that same afternoon. Waiting for permission would have cost far more than money. Concrete barriers disappeared. Excavators exposed the failing drainage system beneath the road. The engineers confirmed my fears. Another heavy storm would have washed the entire road away. There was no time left for meetings, only repairs. For 3 straight days, the project never stopped. When the final inspection ended, the road was safe again. The invoice arrived 4 days later. $22,000. I wasn't surprised by the cost. I was surprised by what happened next. I submitted every receipt, every engineering report, and every photograph to the HOA. 11 days later, their answer finally arrived. 1 page. 2 paragraphs. Request denied. According to the board. I should have asked permission before preventing a disaster. The road belonged to everyone. The responsibility apparently belonged only to me. Something about their response didn't feel right. So I visited the county records office. One property map immediately caught my attention. The HOA owned the lake, but not the only road leading to it. For nearly 30 years, everyone had simply assumed the HOA owned everything. That assumption was about to change everything. Because the moment I discovered who actually owned that narrow strip of land, I finally understood how to beat the HOA legally. The county clerk smiled and slid one final document across the table. The access road wasn't owned by the HOA, it belonged to me. I read the document 3 times. There was no mistake. Every homeowner reached the lake by crossing my land. For years the HOA collected lake maintenance fees, without legally controlling the only entrance. Instead of getting angry, I started asking better questions. I requested every HOA financial report covering the last 6 years. At first, everything looked completely normal. Then I noticed something repeating over and over again. The same contractors, the same addresses, the same names. Duplicate invoices appeared everywhere. That's when I called Rebecca Collins, the best forensic accountant I knew. Rebecca didn't say much. She simply asked for every receipt the HOA had ever issued. 3 days later, she called me back. "You need to come here, right now." She pointed toward one payment, then another, then another. Every so-called lake maintenance project had been paid twice. Residents had unknowingly paid thousands for repairs that never happened. Rebecca estimated the total within minutes. More than $80,000 had quietly disappeared. This was no longer about my $22,000. The HOA hadn't just ignored one repair, someone had been exploiting the entire community for years. The next morning, Rebecca filed a formal forensic report. Within hours, county investigators opened an official inquiry into the HOA's finances. For the first time, the HOA board wasn't asking questions. They were answering them. Marissa insisted everything had been approved legally. The investigators simply asked to see the original invoices. The room became strangely quiet. Nobody could find the paperwork they claimed existed. That silence told investigators more than any explanation ever could. Meanwhile, I made preparations of my own. If the HOA refused responsibility, they would also lose access. Every measurement was verified twice. I wanted everything to be unquestionably legal. County inspectors approved every permit before a single piece of steel arrived. Construction began before sunrise. Most residents had no idea what was happening. By lunchtime, the entrance looked completely different. Residents returning home stopped their cars in complete confusion. Within minutes, Marissa arrived demanding answers. She ordered me to remove the gate immediately. I politely declined. She threatened lawsuits, fines, even arrest. I simply handed her a certified copy of the county deed. She stopped talking halfway through the first page. Instead of admitting defeat, she called the sheriff. 2 patrol cars arrived less than 20 minutes later. The deputies listened carefully to both sides before asking one simple question. Who owns this road? When the certified county records confirmed the truth, even the deputies stepped back. The HOA had just lost the only road to its own lake. Within an hour, the story had spread across the entire neighborhood. Nobody expected the HOA to lose this battle. By sunset, local news crews were already setting up cameras outside the community entrance. The HOA issued a public statement claiming the gate was illegal. They forgot one important detail: facts. The next morning, county officials released certified property maps confirming my ownership. Everything changed overnight. Homeowners stopped blaming me, and started questioning the board. The board scheduled an emergency community meeting. For the first time, every seat was filled before the meeting even started. Residents demanded answers about missing maintenance money, not the gate. Marissa tried to change the subject, but nobody followed. Then Rebecca stood up carrying a single binder. Page after page revealed duplicate payments, missing invoices and fake maintenance records. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody defended the board. One homeowner quietly stood and asked for every board member to resign immediately. Within seconds, dozens of others stood beside him. The vote wasn't even close. Every board member except one was removed that evening. Marissa walked out without saying a single word. The new interim board contacted me before sunrise the next morning. They apologized, then asked the only question that still mattered. What would it take to reopen the road? I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for accountability. If the community wanted the road reopened, trust had to be rebuilt first. My first condition was simple. Every homeowner deserved to know where their money had gone. The new board immediately approved a full independent financial audit. Nothing would remain hidden anymore. My second condition protected every future homeowner. Emergency repairs would never again require HOA permission. The room erupted into applause. For the first time, the HOA finally worked for the people. Only then did I reach into my pocket. The same key everyone thought represented revenge, actually represented responsibility. The lock clicked open. The gate slowly moved aside. Nobody rushed through. Everyone understood what that moment meant. The road had reopened, but the community had changed forever. County investigators completed their report 2 months later. The evidence confirmed every missing dollar. Several former board members faced civil lawsuits. Homeowners eventually recovered much of the money they had lost. In the end, winning was never about closing a gate. It was about opening the truth. People often ask if I regret locking the gate. My answer has never changed. If I had stayed silent, nothing would have changed. Sometimes the smallest piece of land becomes the most powerful piece of evidence. Ownership isn't just about property. It's about responsibility. That lesson cost me $22,000, but it saved an entire community. Months later, new families moved into the neighborhood without knowing the battle that almost changed everything. The new HOA board welcomed every resident with transparency instead of fear. Every financial report became public. Every vote became visible. Trust returned one meeting at a time. The lake finally belonged to the people who truly cared for it. Lily smiled every time we walked past the repaired shoreline. She once asked if fighting the HOA had been worth it. I told her that standing up for what's right is never easy, but it's always worth remembering. Justice rarely arrives overnight, but truth always leaves a trail. And all it took was one document that everyone else ignored. That document changed the future of an entire neighborhood. Power isn't measured by titles, it's measured by integrity. And integrity never needs permission. Because in the end, the strongest foundation isn't concrete. It's character. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about accountability. And sometimes, the only way to protect a community is to remind it that the law belongs to everyone.